Okay.
Hello, let me just get you added to the spotlight here. How are you doing?
Well, I'm kind of grateful right now. None of y'all can see my space because we're redoing another house for my quilting studio and everything's everywhere. So, thank you for
I
asking.
suspect
My,
there's lots of people that can relate to that.
but I hope my question I sent in made sense. I didn't quite know how to word it.
So what you said, any suggestions on the best way to cut accurately for applique if not using a cutting machine? So there's actually a couple of different ways that you can do it. You can either use the printable templates,
Okay.
which we include, and they're usually mirrored. Sometimes we give you the mirrored version and the not mirrored version, but you want to use the mirrored version. You want to make sure that your printer will print accurately at 100%. So we include a 6-inch square, a 6-inch red square on every page. You only
Right.
need to check it one time and then make sure that you use the same settings every time. But you want to print, say, let's say print one page and measure your square. Typically, if it's not measuring 6 inches, there's two reasons. One would be that you've got the default PDF setting to
Right.
shrink to page. So you want to make sure that's set to 100%. The
Right.
other reason, which we learned about last year after a very long time and not knowing this, is that if you're using the generic Windows driver for your printer, chances are it's not going to print accurately. So you want to make sure, like I have you can see it right here, maybe there. I have I have a Brother laser printer, and we actually found out my computer's always had the Brother printer driver, and I've never had a problem. When Cass was here and using that other laptop, I guess the printer had been installed with a generic Windows printer driver, and that laptop would never print PDFs at the right size.
Wow.
And for the longest time, we had no idea why. And then I had a computer guy come over, and he was able to tell us it's because it's the generic printer driver.
Okay.
So you want to make sure that you have the brand specific printer driver for your printer if
That I
you are having any problems
well,
printing.
I printed it out and then I was trying to read and I thought, gosh, I think I'm just impatient. So I said, well, I got my light table out. I put the template underneath and I slapped the fabric on top and I traced it. And I'm pretty good at cutting, but I was reading something else and somehow I just got confused. And I'm sorry if this is taking up too much time, but
No worries.
um, I thought we were supposed to somehow. I don't know. I think there's a way where you can trace the template onto not that fabric, but what's it called?
The fusible
Stabilized.
webbing.
Yes, and then put it on there. And I just wondered what might be the best. Someday I'll invest in another cutting machine, but I just never could get it to work the way I wanted to for the things I was specifically interested in. So
Okay.
until I do that, I need to cut by hand.
Okay. So if what kind of printer do you have?
Well, right now I have an Epson, and I use the and it
Inkjet
photocopies
versus inkjet or laser?
inkjet.
Okay, so if you have an inkjet printer, you can actually apply your fusible webbing. And it's a little bit fabric. It's not overly fabric. Um, what the heck is the word? It's not an overly, it's not particularly economical. But
Okay.
if you have an inkjet printer,
Huh?
then you can prepare your applique fabric with the fusible webbing on the back, keep the backing paper on, and you can cut 8 by 11, 8.5 by 11 pieces of fusible webbing backed fabric, and you can send them through an inkjet printer to print directly on it. Now, whatever you do, anybody listening, whatever you do that with a laser printer, because you'll melt the glue and it will mess up your machine, and it's like going to be a big mess. But you can with an inkjet printer.
Okay.
So that saves the tracing part of it.
Okay.
Because once you got if you print the templates onto a piece of paper, you've got to trace it onto your fusible webbing backing paper, then you apply that to your applique fabric, and then you cut it out, and now you can finally use it, right? Now, another way that you can do it without having to print anything is do it as you're actually stitching. So if you cut your piece of fabric a little bit bigger than the applique shape, so you got, let's backtrack one tiny second. Backing fusible webbing on the back of your fabric, right?
Okay.
Cut a piece of fusible webbing backed fabric with the backing paper still on, so that it's a little bit bigger than the shape that you want to cut. When you're at the machine and stitching the design, you'll stitch the placement line to show where to put the applique shape. And then you can restitch it, having taken the thread out of the machine, at least the top thread. Now, if you take the top thread out of the machine, you need to be able to turn off the top thread sensor. Right. But if you so now you've got the placement line for the applique shape. Now you can put your piece of fusible webbing backed fabric right side up so that it's fully covering your applique shape. Hold it down in the corners with some Scotch Magic tape, restitch it, and it will punch holes in the backing paper on the fusible webbing, right?
Okay.
So now you've had the machine do the tracing. You can guarantee that it's the correct size. And if you cut right on the outside edge of the needle holes, then you guarantee that your applique shape is going to fit. Does that make sense?
It does. I was getting close to trying that, but I don't know what, I was probably too worried about moving. So I was a little bit off, but it's still, and then I wasn't sure I understood the three stitchings that happened with it. So at first in your designs, it stitches the placement. Then I would have put, let's pretend it was cut out already. Then I would have put the design down. It would kind of tack it down, and then it does a finishing stitch. Is that correct?
Well, with fusible web, so we use pre-cut shapes with fusible webbing on the back, right?
Okay.
So if we look at this little heart here, the background is a pale pink, and this is one applique shape here. This is another applique shape here. The pale pink that you see beyond the edge is still the background.
Okay.
Right? So you pre-cut your two applique shapes using the template provided, or using the SVG files, the FCM files, or using the placement line that's in the design. You're going to stitch a placement line that shows you exactly where to put the applique shapes. If you've got them pre-cut, however you got there, then you're going to fuse the applique shapes in place. And now there's no need to do a tack down stitch because the fusible is holding everything in place.
So then I would just bypass that one?
Well, you just stitch what the design tells you to stitch.
Oh, okay. Okay, then I'm okay. Yeah, I got it.
Just stitch what the design tells you to stitch. Now, every now and then we might do a tack and trim. In fact, on the applique version of this heart, essentially on the applique version of this particular heart, you're going to stitch the heart onto a piece of background fabric, right?
Okay.
And any other applique shape. But this applique here and this applique here are the outside edges of the applique. So this stitching line around here is the outside edge of the applique. You don't have the pale pink around
Right.
the outside, but you do want to have something in the middle of it. Now, I decided I didn't want that to be a fused shape because that would make it really stiff. So in order to get this piece of fabric on the background fabric and underneath these two applique shapes, we actually, I'll give you a placement line, and then you put a piece of fabric over the top of it, stitch a trimming line,
Okay.
and then you're going to rough cut around the edge of it. Then you can stitch a placement line for these two applique shapes, put those applique shapes in place, and this raw edge is going to be hidden.
Right. Okay. I think
Right.
that's a little confused because I'm used to doing it really the way you were just explaining. And so then I wasn't sure what I was doing. It came out, but I'm not sure how I did it. So thank you.
If you literally just kind of follow the instructions and put your applique place in when it tells you to, then you'll come out good at the end.
Yeah, it did. It really, I think I'm just not very trusting.
Okay, let's
came out.
call on people who have done this, who can help to elevate your trust in these designs.
No, your design is beautiful. No, it's me.
Anybody okay, so I see lots of people here. Judy stitched them, Andrea stitched a bunch, Brigitte has stitched a ton, Vicky has, Judy has, Christine, pretty much everybody in the room has stitched out lots of our applique designs. So Brigitte actually said in the comments that she uses the needle tracing, which we talked about. So stitch the applique placement line, restitch it with no thread in. That's what Brigitte is referring to as needle placing, or needle tracing. So that there's so many different ways that you can do everything. For me particularly, because I like to when I'm stitching, I'm usually in a hurry, or I am working on that. I am working on figuring out, a bit more time so that we can take this in a bit more of a relaxed manner. But I like to do things in an assembly line fashion. So I do all of my cutting first, cutting pieces of fabric. I do all of my applique fabric preparation. So cutting the pieces to size, putting the fusible webbing on the back, and then I'll sit with my cutting machine and cut all of the applique shapes in one shot, right? Then when I go to my embroidery machine, I know that I don't have to get a pair of scissors out or go to the cutting machine or do anything. I can just stitch, right?
That makes sense.
Not everybody has got that like timeline or deadline, a live line, whatever the heck you want to call it, So if you're one of these, I would love to have the opportunity to just totally relax and do it in its own time, and if you have that, then cutting it with the doing the needle tracing is perfect. It helps, it's almost like it helps you to be a little bit more relaxed and meditative whilst you're doing the process.
Well, thank you. That really was helpful. I think when I say I'm not trusting, I don't trust myself that I understood the instructions correctly. I'm also dyslexic. I mean, medically dyslexic. So sometimes things are confusing for me. So then I don't think I understood, but I think I actually did. So your instructions were very good because it got,
Good.
I just was not sure if I understood what I did. So thank you. But
Anytime you can jump onto our Zoom calls, and I don't care how many times you come back and say, Sarah, help me understand this. Honestly, we have in the guess 4 years that we've been doing these Zoom calls, we've had people who would come back each week and say, tell me again. And I'm happy to go through it as many times as it takes for you to be successful.
well, thank you. I maybe now I'll get a little braver and I'll look into maybe getting a cutting machine again because honestly, I donated mine to the quilt museum up here so they could, make money with it, but I just couldn't figure out how I was going to use it. But now I'm kind of interested in a lot of your applique things, so maybe I'll get another one. So thank you.
Especially for the bigger projects where there's a lot of applique shapes, a
Yeah,
cutting machine makes the world of difference.
I think so. So
Yeah,
thank you.
you are very welcome.